They broke ground without the right parcel map, stacked 96 houses across a boundary line they swore was theirs, and fined me for asking questions. 87 days later, I filed a certified claim that voided their permits and flipped the deed on record. The signatures were already notarized. Welcome to HOA Karma. I'm Dean Walker, civil engineer out of Denton County, Texas. I don't sell drama. I survey it. My day job is reading plats and drainage plans. But this story started with coffee dust and a letter that smelled like toner and arrogance. If you're watching from anywhere an HOA ever pushed too far, tell me your city below. I'm curious how far this reaches. They'd taped the violation notice to my gate at 6 a.m. Section 7.14. Unauthorized excavation adjacent to common boundary. My excavation was a 6-inch soil test hole, legally within my easement, but I wasn't angry yet. Not until I saw their survey drawing. Their new cul-de-sac clipped 23 feet into my lot, a clean rectangle of theft disguised as planning. I ran my thumb along the paper crease and heard the faint rasp of deceit. I drove to their construction trailer. Gravel crunch under my tires, hot air humming with diesel. The site manager, Reed 10 Arms, clipboard pride, didn't even flinch. We own that section now, Mr. Walker. Deeded from Phase 2. I asked for the parcel ID. He shrugged. HOA handled the filings. His confidence was the kind that comes from group signatures, not facts. What they didn't know, I still held the master drainage plan from 2009, the one that listed my strip as a utility corridor never conveyed. It was the backbone of Phase 1. Lose that, and every home past Lot 42 failed compliance. I kept it folded inside a plastic sleeve in my glove box, still smelling faintly of blueprint ammonia. That night, I unrolled it on my kitchen table, next to my mother's old ceramic lamp. She left me this acre when she passed, said, "Land keeps you honest." The HOA had fined her once for her rose trellis. I promised her I'd never sell. That promise hummed under my ribs as I traced the boundary line again, whispering the lot numbers like coordinates to calm myself. Knowledge nugget number 1. In Texas, a recorded plat supersedes HOA covenants. Bylaws can't rewrite land geometry. Only a county clerk stamp can. I filed a records request with the county the next morning. Form RC 24, $12 fee, and marked it expedite. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "Another HOA mess?" she said. "Seems to be the season." 2 days later, I had the scans. No amended plat, no deed transfer, no lot consolidation. Their Phase 2 never legally touched mine. Yet the foundation trucks rolled on, rebar gleaming like arrogance in the sun. The sound of those cement mixers became my metronome of anger. By day 10, I'd mapped every property line, every meter box, every drainage easement. Reed avoided me, but the HOA president, Marla Dunn, left a voicemail. "Dean, your behavior borders on obstruction. Cease interfering or we'll pursue remedies." Remedies? I replayed that word until it lost meaning, then opened a blank legal pad and wrote 3 lines. Chain of title / notice of violations / right of reversion. Each night after work, I walked the fence line, flashlights sweeping the stakes. The smell of wet soil, the buzz of mosquitoes, the distant thud of nail guns, like a clock counting down to something inevitable. At day 21, a certified envelope arrived. $600 fine for encroachment signage. They claimed my private property signs disrupted community harmony. I pinned it to my fridge like a trophy and smiled for the first time in weeks, because they just acknowledged the land was mine enough to accuse me of trespassing on it. I needed witnesses, though, 1 technical, 1 legal, 1 heart. First was Carlin Gwynn, municipal attorney. We'd worked together on a floodplain case once. She drinks black coffee like motor oil and files motions like origami. I slid her the folder. "Tell me if I'm crazy." She read silently for 5 minutes, pen tapping. "You're not crazy," she said finally. "They are, but they'll drag you through procedure unless you anchor it in paper they can't ignore." Second was Sam Price, retired surveyor, 83, still sharp. He showed up with a thermos and magnifying glasses. "They moved the benchmark pins," he muttered, kneeling in the dust. You got a week before concrete sets. After that, you're fighting slabs, not stakes. He handed me a rusted pin he'd pulled from 6 inches down. Keep this. Chain of evidence. The third was Grace Alvarado, my neighbor 2 lots down, widowed teacher, 2 grandkids. She stopped me one evening, apron still dusted with flour. You're not going to let them push you, are you? I told her no. She smiled. Good. Some of us are too old to keep repainting mailboxes they don't own. The next morning, I drafted a notice of pending claim. 8 pages, precise references. Platts hashtag 09-472A, hashtag 09-472B, drainage easement D14. I mailed copies certified to the HOA, developer, and county. The carbon smell of ink felt like armor. What they didn't know was that my mother's original deed included a dormant clause few noticed, a reversion right if the adjacent parcel exceeded its approved density. 96 homes instead of 80 did just that. But I said, nothing, not yet. Let them finish. Let them spend. By day 33, the first house framed out. I watched from the shade, arms folded, like a ghost of property line. The hammers beat a rhythm I could almost respect, because every nail they drove made my leverage stronger. Some nights I'd imagine the future headline. Engineer reclaims land from rogue HOA. Then I'd shake it off, pour another coffee, and mark the next step. County hearing in 12 days. The window was closing, but the paperwork was in motion. And when the first inspection notice landed, red-stamped and smug, I knew exactly where to strike next. The inspection notice claimed unsafe soil compaction, which was ironic since I designed half the retention systems in this county. The letter gave them away. It cited ASTM-D 1557, a standard for controlled fills, not native soil. That meant they hadn't even read their own geotech report. I let the paper rest on my counter, the sunlight sliding over its red stamp like a countdown clock. 12 days to the hearing. Marla, the HOA president, showed up in person that Friday. White SUV, pearls, clipboard, fake smile. Mr. Walker, she started, we're concerned about your tone in these letters. Tone. I leaned against my gate. Marla, I'm concerned about your bulldozers in my storm easement. She blinked once, slow. This entire community benefits from unity. I said, so did every empire before it fell. Her pen hovered midair. After she left, I called Carla. They're getting nervous. I said, good, she replied. Make them document every word. Texas Property Code 202.004. Says all HOA decisions must be recorded and accessible. Start demanding minutes. They'll trip on transparency. The next evening, I drafted my request for meeting minutes. Precise dates, certified mail, 2 copies. Knowledge nugget number 2. Under Texas Open Records provision for nonprofit corporations, even HOAs must release minutes and financials to any member in good standing within 10 days of written request. Refusal triggers statutory penalties. I mailed it Saturday morning. The clerk at the post office gave me that knowing smirk. Another HOA war? He said. I nodded, more like a chess match. The suspense kept me wired. Every envelope I dropped felt like another pawn forward. My leverage wasn't aggression, it was patience. Let them think they own time. By day 42, the board held an emergency meeting. Grace texted me from her seat in the back. They're panicking. Reed says you falsified surveys. I smiled, because Reed had no idea my engineer's seal sat on 3 county permits older than his career. I drove past the site at dusk. Streetlights half installed. Kids' bikes already in driveways of half-built homes. 96 families moving toward a dream built on my land. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused. The plan was simple. Document. Exhaust their arrogance. Then detonate with paper. Inside my truck, a manila envelope sat ready. Inside it, a certified plat, notarized statement from Sam Price, and photos of boundary stakes with time-stamped GPS coordinates. Evidence enough to freeze a development if filed correctly. The hearing date moved closer, 10 days, then 9. Each evening, I'd add one more layer of documentation. HOA emails threatening further fines. Reed's text demanding I stop filming. For the record, Texas is a one-party consent state. I was that party. The recording stayed in a locked folder on my cloud drive, labeled innocuously as Project Drainage Logs. Early the next week, Carla called. Their counsel sent a cease and desist. They think you're bluffing. Good, I said. Bluffs only work if there's a card face down. Do you have one? I paused. Better. I have a clause. That reversion clause from my mother's deed. It was a silent storm behind every polite letter. It stated that any increase in dwelling density beyond approved plan phase 1 nullified adjoining conveyances. They'd never seen it because the HOA's title insurance abstract stopped one layer short. Lazy underwriting. Day 46. Another violation notice. $1,200 for unapproved filming of HOA property. I stapled it to my garage wall under the previous one. A growing art piece of bureaucracy. That night, Grace knocked. They posted on the HOA Facebook. She said, handing me a printout, calling you a squatter. I read it, laughing quietly. Good. Public defamation stacks nicely with civil exposure. She tilted her head. You sound like you're enjoying this. Not yet, I said, but soon. 7 days to hearing. I felt it like pressure behind glass. Carla wanted me to play calm. Sam insisted on evidence photography. We spent an afternoon measuring, shooting, logging every inch. Dust stuck to our shoes. The heat shimmered off asphalt, and Sam muttered, "These fools don't know a setback line if it hit M." That evening, I filed a preemptive injunction request. Cost me $178 in fees. Carla faxed it to the county clerk. It buys you 48 hours of protection if they try a last-minute pour, she said. For days out, the HOA's insurer sent me a courtesy letter acknowledging notice of potential claim. That meant their underwriter knew something was rotten. Insurers move faster than courts when risk smells real. 3 days left. Marla's tone changed. Emails came sugary. Mr. Walker, perhaps a settlement discussion? I didn't answer. Silence is leverage, too. On the eve of the hearing, thunder rolled in, soft and promising. I spread my documents across the dining table. Deeds, plats, notices, recordings. 96 homes, 1 reversion clause, and a lifetime promise to my mother's name. Carla called again. You ready? As ready as they let me be. What's your endgame, Dean? I looked at the folded deed, my mother's signature faint under the light. Justice on paper, I said, and maybe peace on this street. Next morning, I woke before sunrise, the smell of rain still in the air, and loaded the file box into my truck. The hearing started at 9. The board didn't know what was about to hit them, because paper makes a quieter weapon until it lands. The county hearing was held in a beige room that smelled like toner and anxiety. Rows of folding chairs, microphones that never quite worked, and one flag drooping from a brass pole. Reed sat 2 rows ahead, whispering to Marla, their attorney, a slick man in a navy suit, flipped through a binder like he already owned the verdict. Carla nudged me. Don't interrupt. Let them hang themselves. They did. The HOA's counsel opened with a PowerPoint about community uniformity. He called my soil test disruptive activity and my signage defamatory. I watched the clock tick toward 9:20. The moment the clerk would call the docket for boundary review. When my turn came, I stood, the file box heavy in my hands, and laid 3 documents flat. Plat 09-472A, recorded April 17, 2009. I said, Plat 09-472B, never filed. HOA development encroaches by 23.4 feet along the southern utility corridor. Density exceeds recorded limit by 16 units. The hearing officer adjusted her glasses. Mr. Walker, are you asserting a reversionary right? Not asserting, I said. Affirming. The clause is already recorded. They just never read that page. Marla's face drained. Reed whispered something harsh. Their attorney interjected. This is outside scope. Carla slid a certified copy across the table. Scope expands when your client builds on land they don't own. Knowledge nugget number 3. A reversion clause, once triggered by a violation of use or density, operates automatically. No separate deed transfer is required, only notification and recordation. The officer took the document, reading in silence for 20 seconds. The room's air conditioner clicked louder than breathing. Finally, she said, "Acknowledged. Will suspend construction permits pending verification." Suspended. That single word landed like a gavel. Outside, Reed stalked toward his truck, muttering into his phone. Marla tried a different tactic. "Dean, this isn't good for the neighborhood," she said, voice trembling between pleading and command. "It'll be better when you stop stealing from it," I said. Carla chuckled as we walked away. "You realize you just froze 96 properties worth about $38 million? 38.6. I corrected. Give or take a driveway. That night I couldn't sleep. Victory tasted metallic, unfinished. I stared at the ceiling fan shadows spinning across plaster. For every home they'd sold, a family now hung in limbo. I wanted justice, not collateral damage. But until the truth surfaced, no one could build or sell a lie. 2 days later, the retaliation began. An anonymous complaint to the code department. Abandoned vehicles on my lot. Then a noise disturbance call. A deputy arrived, polite but weary. "We got a report of generator use," he said. I showed him the solar rig. "Runs quieter than your cruiser," I said. He grinned. "Figures. Same caller as last week." HOA harassment moves in predictable waves. Cite, isolate, smear, repeat. I kept logs, time, date, source, badge number. Knowledge nugget number 4. Documentation isn't defense. It's artillery. Courts move slow, but logs never lie. 3 nights later, Grace's porch light flickered. She called me, voice shaking. "Someone left flyers, calling you a fraud." "Take pictures," I said. "Leave them on your porch. Don't engage." "You're sure this won't get worse?" "It might," I said, "but it'll end right." Midweek. I found Reed at my fence line with 2 laborers. "We're pulling materials back," he said, eyes hard. "Don't think you won." "Winning's not the point," I said. "Correction is." "You'll regret this." I smiled. "That's the difference. I document regret." Carla filed an injunction extension, attaching proof of harassment. Sam provided new survey photos, dust still clinging to his boots. "They'll fold," he said, "if you hold steady." Still, the anxiety crawled at night, the thought that I'd overplayed, that maybe the board would rally the homeowners, paint me as the villain. The court of public opinion turns faster than any judge. Then Grace texted me a screenshot of a thread on the neighborhood app. "Why is construction stopped? Who owns this land?" Replies poured in. "He's the engineer who caught them lying." Another, "Good for him. HOA finds us but breaks their own rules." Momentum shifted quietly, like wind changing direction. One evening, I walked the boundary again. 3 bar skeletons stood silent, half buried in clay. Streetlights buzzed without purpose. I touched one of the survey stakes, paint flaking under my thumb, and realized the first domino had already tipped. That weekend, Marla called an open discussion meeting. I went, not to speak, but to listen. The hall smelled like burnt coffee and folding tables. Voices rose, homeowners demanding answers. "You said everything was approved. Why can't we close on our homes? Who's paying the interest?" Marla tried to calm them, but panic leaks through tone. Reed whispered furiously in her ear. Carla leaned toward me. "They're eating their own minutes," she said. A homeowner turned to me. "Is it true you own that strip?" "Yes," I said, "and I warned them months ago." Gasps rippled. Someone muttered, "Then why'd they keep building?" Reed slammed his binder shut. Meeting adjourned. But the questions didn't stop. They multiplied like cracks in wet cement. The next 48 hours were chaos for the HOA. Emails leaked. Homeowners whispered, and the developer's lender froze disbursements pending title irregularities. I heard that phrase 3 times from 3 different mouths, and each time it tasted better. Marla tried to spin it, sent a glossy newsletter about temporary administrative review. But she couldn't bury the county notice taped to the clubhouse door. Construction suspension. Section 3A, pending plat verification. The orange paper flapped in the wind like a flag of surrender. Grace called that night. "Dean, people are starting to thank you." "For what?" "For being stubborn. Turns out it helps." I told her not to celebrate yet. HOAs don't die easy. They mutate. Carla said it first. They'll file a counterclaim, probably for interference or defamation. "Let them," I said. "The discovery process will cost them more than a land's worth. You enjoy this a little too much." "I enjoy accuracy." Sam laughed when he heard that. "You remind me of myself at 30, more patience than mercy." 3 days later, the HOA's attorney filed exactly what Carla predicted, a claim of intentional interference with contractual relations. It came printed on thick ivory paper, embossed logo, smug font. We countered with a motion to dismiss and an affidavit of ownership. Simple math. No ownership, no interference. But that wasn't the suspense beat that kept me awake. It was what Marla said in her interview with a local blog. The association acted in good faith based on preliminary plats. Preliminary. That one word hinted at the nail in their coffin, because preliminary plats expire after 24 months if not recorded. Theirs had expired 10 years ago. I stayed up past midnight, scanning old county archives, eyes burning from screen glare. At 1:37 a.m., I found it. Preliminary Plat 09 PH2, stamped lapsed April 17, 2011. The smell of toner drifted from the printer as the page slid out. Proof of decay, legal and literal. The next morning, I met Carla at the diner. The waitress filled our mugs without asking. Carla always tipped 40%. "This enough to finish them?" I asked. "It's a bullet," she said. "We still need a chamber." Meaning we need an audience that matters. A neutral authority. Something public, recorded, official. A county inspector? Better, a state land auditor. They can void approvals on site. I nodded. "How long to get one here?" 2 weeks. Maybe less if you file a formal complaint with the plat lapse. "Then I'll start the timer today." Microcliff ticked quietly in my head. 2 weeks. 14 days to prepare the stage. By day 5, HOA board members started jumping ship. One email from a treasurer. "I didn't know about the reversion clause. Please remove my name from correspondence. Fear travels faster than any certified letter." I walked the site again, now eerily quiet. The smell of sawdust lingered, mixed with rain-soaked dirt. Kids' chalk drawing still goes to the curbs. 96 half-finished promises staring back at me. I wasn't immune to guilt. Some nights I thought about the families, the buyers with deposits. But then I'd picture my mother's roses, cut down once by an HOA beautification project. I'd rebuilt that trellis after her funeral. I wasn't letting them erase her land, too. Halfway through the countdown, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Walker, this is Ken Dolan, State Land Auditor's Office. We received your packet." "You got the lapse file?" "Yes." "Interesting case. We'll be conducting an on-site review next Friday at 10 a.m., a fixed date. The kind of sentence that changes everything." I told Carla. "Perfect," she said. "We'll make it public. Invite press. Let them hang themselves under daylight." Grace offered to bring cookies for the auditors. "Nothing softens authority like sugar," she said. Meanwhile, Marla and Reed doubled down. Hired security to patrol the site, claiming vandalism risk. It looked more like theater, 2 guards pacing between skeleton houses. Sam drove by one evening, leaned out his window, and called, "Clock's ticking, Dean." 13 days. I said, "Make M count." At home, I prepped binders. 1 blue for plats, 1 red for correspondence, 1 black for the reversion clause and mother's deed. The metal rings clicked shut with a satisfying finality. The night before the inspection, Carla called. "Remember," she said, "don't lead with anger. Lead with paper." "That's the plan." "Good, because they're bringing their lawyer." I smiled into the dark. "So am I." The next morning dawned bright and pitiless, the kind of Texas sunlight that bleaches lies clean. I loaded the binders, grabbed Sam's old survey pin for luck, and drove to the site. Marla was already there, pearls tight, voice sharper than the wind. "You really think you can embarrass this association, Mr. Walker?" I closed my truck door softly. "Not embarrass. Educate." The first camera lens glinted from across the street, and I knew the show had begun. 2 local news crews had shown up by 9:30, drawn by the county bulletin that listed public review, HOA construction irregularities. One cameraman balanced his rig on the hood of a sedan. Another crouched near the curb. Grace stood off to the side with her tray of cookies, like it was a bake sale for justice. The state auditor, Ken Dolan, arrived precisely on time, pressed Khaki's clipboard, voice like gravel in cold water. "Mr. Walker? Here. You filed a complaint?" "Yes, sir," with documentation. I handed him the blue binder. Every recorded plat and lapse record. He flipped a few pages, nodding. "You're thorough. I make a living at thorough." Marla marched over, Reed flanking her, attorney in tow. "Mr. Dolan, this is harassment," she began. "Our project was approved." "By whom?" Dolan asked. "The HOA board." He looked at her over his glasses. "Not a recognized permitting authority. In the state of Texas, ma'am." Reed tried to pivot. "We have letters of intent, signatures." Dolan raised a hand. "Intent doesn't transfer title. Recording does. Do you have the recorded plat for Phase 2? The silence that followed was surgical. The wind carried the smell of clay and diesel. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. "I'll wait," Dolan said. Their attorney rifled through his folder. Papers whispering like dry leaves. "Nothing." Carla leaned close to me. "He's going to cite them on the spot," she whispered. At exactly 10:14, Dolan spoke again. "Without a recorded plat, all improvements past the boundary are non-compliant. You're in violation of Section 212.009 of the Local Government Code. Construction is hereby ceased pending remediation." He signed the form with a slow flourish. Marla's jaw tightened. "You can't just—" "Ma'am, I just did—" A flash popped from one of the cameras. Grace's cookies trembled on the tray. The reporter asked me, "Mr. Walker, is it true you own this land?" "Yes," I said. "It's also true I warned them months ago." "Do you plan to demolish the homes?" "No. I plan to correct the record. They built 96 mistakes. I'm just here to make sure the truth stays standing." Reed muttered something under his breath and stalked off. As the crowd dispersed, Dolan handed me a copy of his report. "We'll file this with the county within 72 hours. You'll get official acknowledgement." "Thank you," I said. He nodded. "You did your homework, son. Most people just yell at meetings." When he drove away, Carla exhaled. "That's your reversal one." "Feels more like halftime," I said. She smiled. "Trust me, it's the pivot." That evening, I poured a coffee and watched the news clip on repeat. The headline read, "HOA project halted over title dispute." The comment section exploded, half outrage, half applause. And somewhere between the noise, I felt something loosen inside. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was my mother's voice saying, "Land keeps you honest." But the HOA wasn't done. 2 nights later, I found my mailbox pried open, letters scattered in the gravel. A small act of spite, but it rattled me more than I wanted to admit. Grace saw me picking them up. "They're scared," she said. "Maybe," I answered, "but scared people make stupid moves." Next morning, Carla confirmed it. They filed a restraining order, claiming you're interfering with access to common areas. I laughed. "Common areas built on private land?" "Exactly. Judge won't buy it, but it buys them time." The tension bled into my sleep. Every sound at night felt like tires on gravel. Every light flickered like surveillance. Still, I logged everything. Dates times photos, license plates. Facts over fear. By the end of the week, word reached me that the HOA's insurer had opened a coverage investigation. That's corporate code for we're looking for someone to blame. I made sure the only blame left pointed upward, to their board. Meanwhile, Grace and a few neighbors drafted a petition demanding transparency. If they fine us for shrubs, she said, we deserve to see their books. I added a note to the petition header. For accountability, not vengeance. It gathered 74 signatures in 2 days. Carla smirked when she saw it. That's a quorum. For what? For new elections. The idea hung there between us like static. I hadn't planned to dismantle them politically, just legally, but maybe the only real fix was both. Sam dropped by that evening, boots dusty, thermos in hand. They're scared, huh? Starting to crack. He grinned. Crack spread. We sat on the tailgate, watching lightning far off to the south. The storm wasn't here yet, but it was coming. Somewhere between the thunder rolls, I decided that when this ended, I'd trade my leverage not for money, but for reform. My mother would have liked that. 3 days later, the auditor's final report hit, the public record, stamped and sealed. HOA at fault, construction in violation, all sales frozen. Dominoes starting to fall. And yet, one more card remained face down, the one they still didn't know I held. That card was worth every sleepless night. Inside my safe sat a thin, beige folder labeled Assignment of Rights, Parcel Utilities. It wasn't dramatic, but it was lethal. Months earlier, before this war started, the developer's subcontractor had sold me a minor utility easement for $50, an overlooked transfer they never rescinded. That strip controlled the main water and electrical conduits feeding all 96 houses. I'd almost forgotten about it until the auditor's report reminded me to check. When I unfolded it, the notarized date gleamed March 14th, 2022. Still valid. Still mine. The clause read, owner reserves right to approve, deny, or condition any third-party service connection. It was pure legal dynamite. Carla whistled when she saw it. Dean, this is your ace. I call it leverage. I said, whatever you call it, don't pull it yet. Let them sweat through the insurance audit first. So I waited and documented. Always documented. Within a week, the HOA's insurer canceled their general liability coverage pending investigation. No bond, no build. Reed's company started hemorrhaging subcontractors. Marla's emails turned frantic. We need to meet. Resolve this amicably. I ignored her until the night of the emergency HOA session. Grace convinced me to attend. They need to see the person they tried to bury, she said. The clubhouse buzzed like a wasp nest. Folding chairs, bad coffee, fear thick in the air. Marla opened with forced calm. We're here to discuss corrective actions. One homeowner stood. You told us everything was approved. Marla smoothed her notes. We acted in good faith. Another shouted. Faith doesn't record plats. Laughter and anger collided. Then she spotted me at the back. Mr. Walker, perhaps you'd like to address the group? I walked forward slowly, file in hand, pulse steady. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't come to destroy this community. I came to protect it from its own paperwork. I held up the utility rights document. You see this? It gives me control over every main line entering those 96 homes. Murmurs rippled through the room. But I'm not here to turn anything off. I'm here to turn something on, transparency. Carla leaned against the wall, arms crossed, half smile forming. Reed stood. You can't threaten the infrastructure. It's not a threat, I said. It's an audit. I own it legally. Files stamped, paid for. You built on it without consent. Marla's lawyer paled. He's right, he whispered. We missed that assignment in due diligence. The homeowners erupted, voices overlapping, chairs scraping. Grace's voice cut through the noise. Then fix it. That was the moment I waited for. Here's my offer, I said. You reform the board, open records, term limits, transparent budgets, rollback of excessive fines, and I reassign this utility easement back to the association at no cost. Marla blinked, unsure whether to scream or thank me. That's extortion, she muttered. It's negotiation, Carla said evenly. Welcome to adulthood. I could feel the shift in the room, anger turning toward her, not me. One homeowner raised a hand. If he can fix this, let him. We're tired of paying for their mistakes. Heads nodded. Reed tried one last shot. He's manipulating you. He doesn't care about the community. Grace answered for me. He's the only one who bothered to read the damn deeds. The board recessed for private discussion. But private meant nothing now. Half the homeowners followed him out into the hallway, demanding resignations. Carla leaned over. You realize you just triggered the domino collapse. Yeah, I said, and I'm not even sorry. That night, I updated my log one final time. March 8th, utility easement leverage presented. Reform proposal pending. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from release. 2 days later, I received an email marked urgent, board vote pending. The subject line, proposal for structure reform. Inside a single line, motion to accept Walker's conditions passes 18-3. I read it twice, letting it sink in. Reversal number 2 was forming on its own. Still, the HOA wasn't fully done collapsing. The developer filed for mediation to limit financial exposure. The insurer demanded restitution, and the county scheduled a compliance reinspection. But the board, my board now, was changing. Grace brought cupcakes to celebrate. You're a hero, she said. Heroes are loud, I replied. I'm just thorough. That night, I left my porch light on, not as a signal, but as proof. This street belonged to reason again. Then came the letter that would seal everything. The one I'd been waiting on for 70 days. County acknowledgement. Reversion of Parcel D confirmed. Title updated to Walker Holdings, LLC. It wasn't victory. It was correction, notarized. When I laid that paper on my desk, the sound it made was small but final, like a latch closing on years of arrogance. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. No trucks, no cranes, just the low hum of cicadas. And somewhere in that hum, I heard my mother's voice again, steady, certain, proud. I whispered back to her, it's over, but part of me knew it wasn't quite. Not until every line item, every signature, every voice on that board faced the same daylight I'd forced on their paperwork. The county's reinspection was scheduled for Tuesday morning. I didn't even have to attend, but I went anyway. Curiosity, maybe closure. Dolan was there again, clipboard under his arm, same gravel voice. You made good on your promise, he said, scanning the corrected plat. New HOA charter looks cleaner than most city ordinances. Transparency clause in Section 8. I told him. Quarterly financials, open meetings, recorded minutes. He nodded. That'll keep them honest. Marla arrived 10 minutes late. Pale, smaller somehow. Her pearls were gone, replaced by a paper badge that read consultant volunteer. Reed didn't show it all. Rumor was he'd taken a job 3 towns over. When the inspector finished the walkthrough, Dolan handed her the compliance slip. Conditional approval, he said, pending full reform implementation. Grace squeezed my arm. Conditional's better than corrupt. I smiled. Conditional's real life. A few homeowners gathered, shaking my hand, thanking me. One older man said, You saved our investment. I thought about correcting him, telling him I wasn't in it for property values, but instead just said, Glad it's fixed. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of iced tea, the reversion deed folded neatly beside me. The street was calm again. Porch lights glowed in a soft, uneven rhythm. For the first time in months, I wasn't listening for tires on gravel. Still, closure has a sound. It's not silence. It's paper snapping into a binder. Carla called. We got the consent decree draft from the mediation. Terms. Marla's banned from holding any HOA position for 5 years. Board term limits locked at 2. Open records compliance monitored by the state for 12 months. An insurance settlement covers homeowners' deposits. You walk clean. It was almost too neat. Feels like a movie ending, I said. She laughed. A boring one, maybe. No explosions, just signatures. Those are the best kind. The next day, local news ran a follow-up. HOA reforms after title scandal. Residents vote for new leadership. The thumbnail showed Grace outside the clubhouse holding a clipboard, her apron visible under her jacket. I wasn't even mentioned. Perfect. A week later, the first new board meeting took place. I sat in the back row, silent observer. The new president, a soft-spoken accountant named Malik, opened with, "We exist to serve, not to rule." Applause followed. For the first time, I joined in when the motion to adopt the Community Fairness Charter passed unanimously. I slid my final envelope across the table to Malik. Inside was the reassignment deed for the utility easement. No cost, just one signature required. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I'm sure," I said. "Power should stay with the people using it." He signed it slowly, carefully. The click of his pen echoed like a door unlocking. Carla leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You did it, Dean." I looked around the room. Neighbors talking, laughter, no tension. "We did it," I said, "and I think my mom can finally rest." But I wasn't done speaking to the audience that had followed every word of the story. If you face an HOA that overreached, filed fines, invaded privacy, rewrote rules in the dark, tell me how you fought back. Share your tactic so someone else learns how to stand up. And if you've never faced one, remember, those officers read these comments too, so leave your message for them here. Outside, rain began tapping the roof, soft and steady. It washed the dust off the curbs, the old violation signs, the pass itself. Grace waved from her porch. "Cookies tomorrow?" "Always," I said. The next morning, a county truck rolled through and took down the construction suspended notice. The pole left a small scar in the soil, which I filled myself with a handful of gravel and a quiet nod. By the weekend, the street looked ordinary again. Lawns trimmed, kids biking, dogs barking. The kind of ordinary my mother used to say was sacred. I leaned on the fence, watching the sunset stretch across the rows of roofs that finally stood on legal ground, and thought, paperwork did what rage never could. Then, just as the sky turned copper, I heard footsteps behind me. Grace again, smiling. "You gonna tell your story somewhere?" "Maybe," I said, "if it helps someone else." "Name it something good." I smiled. Already did. Because every reform, every boundary redrawn, every act of quiet justice carries one title that fits it best. HOA built 96 homes on my property. I let them finish, then took it all back in court. That title ran across the local paper 2 weeks later, though I hadn't given them a quote. The reporter pulled the phrasing straight from county records, and I couldn't help but smile. Truth had a rhythm of its own now. Life settled into something resembling peace. The air smelled like cedar mulch instead of asphalt dust, and the mornings were quiet except for the soft whine of sprinklers. The HOA signs of the subdivision entrance had been replaced. "Welcome to Fair Acres Community," founded 2025, reformed by residents. Gray said it was the first sign in years that didn't make her roll her eyes. Sam stopped by with his old thermos. "Still dented, still hot enough to burn. Heard they're naming the Greenbelt after your mom," he said. I nodded. "Didn't ask for it, but it feels right." He grinned. "Land keeps you honest, son. Told you that." The county required a public report outlining the reform terms, so Carla drafted one. I proofread it carefully. Every comma mattered when history became precedent. The first line read, "This consent agreement establishes transparent governance for the residents of Fair Acres and nullifies prior misuse of authority by the HOA board." Reading it felt like closing a book that had started with a trespass notice. The insurance settlements processed quietly. The families who bought homes were allowed to stay without extra fees. Even the lender offered a statement, resolved through lawful cooperation. The irony wasn't lost on me. One evening, Grace's grandkids chalked the sidewalk again. Bright swirls, stick figures, a crooked sun. One of them looked up and asked, "Mr. Dean, is this your street?" I knelt down. It's everyone's street now. Inside my house, the file boxes were stacked neatly by the door. Not trophies, just evidence that paperwork can build peace when wielded with patience. I labeled the top one closed matters. A week later, Malik invited me to speak at the community's first open meeting under the new charter. I hesitated, then agreed. Standing behind the microphone, I felt that old pulse of adrenaline, the one that used to drive my anger. This time, it carried something else, steadiness. I'm not here to talk about what they did wrong. I'm here to talk about what we learned. Rules protect people only when the people can read them. Meetings mean something only when they're open. And land should be defended, but never weaponized. It's where we live, not where we fight. Applause filled the hall. Not loud, but genuine. The kind of sound that builds community instead of breaking it. Afterward, Carla handed me a small envelope. Final filing from the county, she said. Inside was a stamped confirmation. Walker Holdings, LLC, dissolved per reassignment and reform agreement. I'd given the land back to the people, officially. The ink shimmered under the fluorescent light, and for once, I felt lighter than paper. Outside, the evening air carried that faint Texas humidity that makes everything smell alive. Streetlights flickered on one by one, warm and even. If you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so the next story reaches you first. And as a responsible citizen, share this so others learn and get inspired. That's on us. Grace joined me by the fence as the last pink faded from the sky. So what now? She asked. I looked at the quiet street, the homes built on rightful ground, the children laughing near the lamplight. Now, I said, we keep it honest. In the month that followed, 3 HOA presidents across neighboring counties resigned, citing governance reform influence. The state adopted new disclosure guidelines for community associations. A small article credited Fair Acres as the model, and somewhere in my workshop, on the hum of a single bulb, the original reversion deed rests in a frame, creased, worn, but untouchable. Next to it, a photo of my mother's rose trellis in full bloom, because in the end, justice didn't roar. It clicked like a lock turning home.